Hello world, I'm Evan Gudmestead, an instructor of application and web development at Rankin Technical College. In the beginning of 2025, the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, which is an open standard, surged in popularity and quickly became an industry standard. Then, October 1st, a few days ago, Microsoft released the Microsoft Agent Framework, essentially merging AutoGen and semantic kernel into one new framework. In today's coding tutorial, I'm going to show you how using both of these technologies, using an MCP server, we will expose a tool, we will expose functionality using an MCP server, and then we will consume that tool with an AI agent using the brand new Microsoft Agent Framework. All right, let's go ahead and get started creating my MCP server. So just for the most simple code demonstration, I'm going to do this in a console application. So we'll start with Visual Studio Community 2022 and build a C# console application. And I will call this my MCP demo and put it on this AI stuff folder in my desktop. I'm going to choose .NET 9, the standard version of .NET, not the long-term support. And so, just as MCP is brand new, so I'm learning as I go, and it helps to define MCP. So what is MCP? The Model Context Protocol is an open standard, as I said before, that allows AI agents to connect with and use external tools. And so your tools are your functions, your custom logic. And so these AI agents use tools in a way that semantic kernel used plugins. So this is your custom code. And of course, when you have a custom function, that custom function could access data out of a database. Point is, it's an external source of information. So it's an external tool that can access external data. And so that's the idea of MCP. And again, it kind of has been really popular here in 2025. Now, we need to go ahead and start with some installations of a couple different packages. And so there's a few packages that we will browse for and install to get this up and running. Of course, the new Microsoft Agents Framework, there's a little icon, is currently in pre-release. They just announced it less than a week ago. So we need to install the pre-release of Microsoft Agents.AI. And then for the LLM, I use OpenAI. So we also need to put a .OpenAI on that so that we can bring in that for the LLM. And then we need to bring in Microsoft Extensions Hosting. So we are hosting an MCP server, so that's what this dependency is all about. This is in pre-release as well, which is all good. Now the one thing that's not new, at least within the last month, is Model Context Protocol. So we're just going to bring in Model Context Protocol, and actually it does look like pre-release. So those are the 4 dependencies that we will bring in. And if I go to Solution Explorer, under Packages, we can see that we've got those 4 things brought in. So again, all we're doing here is we're going to take a custom tool and host it on an MCP server, and then we're going to consume that inside of an AI client. out of an AI agent client, if you will. So for simple demonstration purposes, with all this AI agents, I can't help and continually fall back on my agent Smith from the Matrix. So here we just have a C# method. This method is going to be the tool that we host, okay, that we will use MCP Server to host. And so the first thing to do is create that tool. Now, of course, this tool, once we start seeing how basic it can get, so this basic code demo, of course, you can imagine how powerful this may be, because this is a custom C# method that can do whatever programming logic you need it to do. And so the class to create an MCP server is this MCP server tool. Of course, we need to bring in the model context protocol.server. And as I'm bringing in these chunks of code, these different usings get put at the top. So the class is MCP server tool, and we are going to call a create function to create a AI function factory, passing in the eliminate threat function. Now notice this function takes one input that is referred to as the target, and then of course Agent Smith his job is to eliminate targets from the matrix. So there we go. We are now creating that function inside of our, I did not mean to double click that. Really couple lines of code to, let's bring in one more using statement. Using dependency injection. Okay, so we have this tool. We then wrap this tool. Line 21 creates an application builder object. So it's an empty application builder. And then we add a little dependency injection, basically attaching that tool to our application builder. And then we run builder.build run async. Not a ton of code. And if I go ahead and run, doesn't output anything. But what it does do, as this runs for the first time, is it will generate the executable file on your hard drive. Let me show you where that is. If we go to Solution Explorer and I open the folder in File Explorer for my MCP demo, I've got a bin folder, debug.net 9, and there's my MCP demo.exe. So this is the path, this is the full path to my executable. Okay, then I'm going to need this path when I consume this from the client side. So that's all we need to do from the server. We make a tool, we host the tool, and we run the application builder. That generates the executable. That's all that is needed on this side. Now, the next thing we will do, we will add the client code. So let's add a new project, console app, and MCP Client. Kind of a neat little trick here. If we go to the MCP demo, we can go to the solution file. So what we do is we click on, the project. You click on the project itself, and it'll show you all the dependencies that we have brought in. So if I just copy those 4 dependencies and go to my client and paste them underneath this property group, that will be all that we need to get these dependencies brought in on the client as well. So now on the client, what is the code? So let's bring in some using statements up at the top. So again, we're using this Microsoft.Agents.AI, that's the new Microsoft Agent framework, using the Model Context Protocol client side of the house instead of the server, using OpenAI to actually create our agent, and using this component model for some decorations on some methods. So the thing that we need to do is we need to give it the path to that executable file. And so this is going to be done with a standard IO client. Standard IO client. You can see this is part of this client that just lit up. And here I'm going to give it the full path to the executable. So again, kind of going here in Windows, I need to copy this path. And when I paste that, all the single slashes turn into double backslashes. One more double backslash, and give it the name of the executable, which is MCP demo exe. If you just copy the name that way, no typos, and paste it at the end. So this is the full, path on my local hard drive to my MCP server. Okay, now I've run it and I built the executable. So the options will be passed into a standard IO transport. So you got options that get passed into a transport class, and then that transport class gets passed into the MCP Client class. So on one side you had MCP Server, on this side you have MCP Client. Notice again, you've got options passed into a transport, you got the transport passed into the client. And that's basically how you link this client to that server. Now that we have an MCP client, we can read the tools that were configured by the server. We can list the tools, so we can read the tools in a list format, and this will create a C# list of agent tools. Well, there's really only one tool, and so we can write, hey, if this is working, if there are agent tools, right? I'm just gonna do a little console write line, and I'm just going to test that my client is in fact getting my tools. Okay, now let me pause here. I would expect my agent tools to return. Now that's the MCP demo. Let me run the demo one more time. Make sure that the executable is most up to date. And then let me run the client. Okay, I just had to run that server one more time. So now I am. So what did I just do there? I'm not sure if I changed any of my source code on my server, but if you do change your source code on your server, you effectively have to regenerate that executable. So just to be sure, I reran the server, regenerated the executable. Now on the client, when I run it, I'm able to read the tools from the server and get inside of this if statement, and it says available, the tools are available. Okay, so now that we know tools are available, this line of code, remember I said that your LLM, my LLM, is the Open AI LLM. So I have an API key that if I go to platform.openai.com, I've got a couple of keys here. If you're following along, you'll need to create this secret key and copy the value And what I do is I put that in an environment variable in Windows. So if I go into Windows, click Start, and I search for environment variables, and I click environment variables, you will see here is a variable, a new variable that I created. I gave it the name OpenAI API key, and then I paste the string that is my private API key. Of course, you don't see the full key there. Once you have that on Windows, once you have that running, you will need to reboot Visual Studio to get this line to work. So go ahead and close down Visual Studio, start it back up, and then Visual Studio will be able to read the current environment variables. You kind of have to do a reboot there. Then we can, once we've read the key, we can create an OpenAI client, again using this OpenAI dependency that's part of this Microsoft Agents framework. So here's our OpenAI client. That client is basically a chat bot, so we have to have a chat completion that says, hey, go ahead and use the GPT-4o model that is available on OpenAI from that key. So here we have a client. That client is essentially a chat bot, and now this chat completion, now we can configure an AI agent. This is where AI agent chat completion client dot create agent, AI agent. Okay, so inside of the create AI agent, I'm going to hold off on here. This AI agent, I want to have two tools. I want to have one tool consumed from the server, and I want to have an additional tool just to show this off. So just to show off an additional functionality that my AI agent can do, and this is not related to the matrix, of course, just showing something very different. Here's another random function called get stock price. Okay, so this AI agent will have two functions. Function 1 comes from the MCP server. Function 2 is unique to this AI agent, so get stock price. So going back to my AI agent, so this AI agent on line 28 is a chatbot. It has some instructions. It's an orchestrator agent. Now the idea of an orchestrator agent is you can have a bunch of different agents working together. So this is not multi-agent. In fact, this is a single agent with multiple tools. Let me show you those tools. So I give my AI agent a name, a description, and a tools. Realize agent tools was my list. And so this is a list of MCP, the generic is MCP Client tool. So this is a list of MCP Client tool. And I say go ahead and pass in the first tool inside of agent tools. So this is a C# list first method that will put that first tool. Now this is the tool that comes from the MCP server. Now this is the second tool that I'm adding to my AI agent. So this agent has two functions in addition to just being able to chat. And so if I boot up this agent, so basically how do we start this agent? I'm going to do agent run. You know, if I'm running the agent and I give it this input and I say target is red pills, and these are the humans in the movie, the human members of the resistance who have unplugged from the matrix. So the AI agent will figure out, I've got a couple of different potential things I can do. This should consume that MCP server tool. And so the response from the working line 34, it says the threat elimination process has been initiated for the red pills within the matrix. Perfect. That is the working demonstration. We have served a tool on an MCP server, and then we've come over here and using the new agent framework, we have consumed that tool. Now, just to show off that I can run this agent again and giving it different input, this AI agent will figure out what function it needs to run. So if I can comment this out or I can leave it uncommented, doesn't really matter. And you can see I'll get multiple responses, and the process of eliminating the red pills is underway. And then, the system is retrieving the stock price for Microsoft. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to find out. So obviously just kind of a mock. This is obviously not really retrieving the current Microsoft ticker. However, if there's an MCP server out there that gets live stocks, this is what you would have to do. Now, I will say this is a good template for both creating an MCP server and consuming that. The big difference when you're consuming an MCP, when you have a client, instead of the standard IO, client transport, we're going to be accessing this via HTTP. So the big difference in doing this in the real world and just doing this for demonstration purposes is that we're going to be passing in a different transport options, obviously over HTTP instead of your standard IO, which is on your local machine. So really enjoying, personally, really enjoying learning this Microsoft Agent framework and learning MCP and trying to simplify these code demos down into usable chunks of code for my students. So hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think in the comments below.